welcome everyone to another in the series of workshops by Teamwrkr. And today we have Kohs, who's here to talk about how market research is not too expensive to do these days. I know we've all seen very expensive research studies out there, but Greg's going to tell us why it's not too expensive to do. So Greg, I'm going to turn it right over to you. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Phil. I appreciate it, and good morning to you too, Kristen. My name is Kohs. I'm very eager to share with you some of the insights that I've gained over 30 years in the market research industry. And especially, I want to share some effective research techniques that are going to help your freelance business or that of your clients. If you feel like some of this doesn't apply to you and your, maybe sole proprietor shop, almost certainly you're going to be working with clients who have larger market research needs, and it will always help you to kind of come to the table with some ideas and potentially even to get into the practice of deploying some of these options that I'm going to talk to you about without costing a lot of money. So nearly every one of us, probably everyone who's watching this today, is born with the blessing of 5 senses. There's sight, hearing, touch, taste, and the sense of smell. With these 5 senses, we become aware of the world around us, we form knowledge, and we survive. You might imagine your business having senses too. I like to think of market research as the eyes and the ears of any business. If you're running your enterprise without any established market research activity, then in a real sense, you're running your business in a way that by choice is deaf to its customers or blind to the competition. Your business becomes less aware of the market and its knowledge is incomplete, and your business might not survive if you're not doing any market research at all. I sometimes hate these, but I like to go over my career just so you know a little bit about my background and kind of what's my story. In college and graduate school, I majored in history. I tended to examine history through the lens of using quantitative methods to understand the strengths and weaknesses of businesses, of the military, of governments. And while in graduate school, I happened to be simultaneously working at a small market research firm. And in part due to a very dismal job prospect or opportunities in academia for tenure-track positions in history, I decided then that I was going to take on a full-time career in market research. So I worked at a couple of very small firms for about 7 years, and then I worked at a much larger firm. It was kind of a top 20 or top 25 market research establishment for about 8 years. Then I moved over to the client side. One of my clients was Comcast Cable, so I worked there for 5 years, and then I was promoted to lead the market research function, a team. Well, it started as a team of 2 people, and we grew it to a team of 5 people, but basically managing all the market research for Comcast Business, which was the B2B arm of Comcast. I separated from Comcast Business at the end of 2019, and I went to work for a friend who is in the market research industry, and her company had acquired a sports poll. So this was surveying fans and sponsors of some of the major sports leagues like Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL. So our clients were like ESPN and ABC Sports and all of these types of clientele. Problem was that this was in the year that COVID was introduced to the planet. So stadiums and such were empty in the summer of 2020. And not only were our clients, pulling away from renewals for contracts the next year, they even wanted givebacks on the current contracts. So unfortunately, my spell with SSRS was fairly short, and that is what led me to form my own business. And I created an LLC called Research Biz, hung out my own shingle, and doing market research on my own. I've been pretty successful over the past 2 years of operation. Have a lot of great clients. Some of them are small startups. Some of them are much larger established enterprises. Small companies are sometimes ready to conduct market research, but they really don't know where to begin. Larger enterprises, they often have their own marketing research staff members, but even they will sometimes want an impartial vendor to take a look at their business problem, or they want somebody who brings to the table um, a historical knowledge of their industry and maybe even of their competitors. So that's why they reach out to a third party market research. Um, let's see here. Why are we not advancing? There we go. Sorry about that. One thing I've noticed is that there is a common thread. I've worked in the service of Fortune 100 companies all the way down to one person consulting practices. So from big to small, I find that common thread is that regardless of how large or how small any client can be, whatever amount of market research they're currently conducting, every business could probably benefit from doing a little bit more. So here's a question: how much market research is enough? And this is just kind of a little mental exercise for you. If you think about all the revenue that your practice brings in as a freelancer, or how much money your client's business is bringing in on an annual basis, what percentage of revenue should you be dedicating each year to market research efforts? And I have found in studying different industries that ranges generally from about 0.5% of revenue to all the way up to 2.5% of revenue. And it kind of depends on what industry you're in. If you're in a sort of a commodity business where you're mining coal and selling coal wholesale to power plants, or even a dairy producer or something like that, you're not going to spend a whole lot on market research. Utilities are kind of in the same scope. Wholesalers on the lower end of the spectrum. But as you get into retail and you're dealing with consumers, you're going to generally spend more on market research because it's so important, and your customer base is kind of fickle. If they don't like the way they're being treated at your store, or they don't like the prices, they have another store that they can go to. Restaurants as well are going to be higher valuation on market research. Consumer electronics really goes high, and then generally the highest of all are consumer packaged goods. If you look at a Procter and Gamble or Johnson and Johnson or some companies like that, they're most likely going to be spending the most, relatively speaking, on market research. So I was going to ask here a show of hands. How many of you are somewhere in this range where you're spending at least 0.5% of your revenue on market research? And I'm probably guilty too, as my own. But time is also money, so I do spend a lot of time putting into market research. So we can agree that most large businesses don't fool around with their market research plans. They allocate budget, they're hiring staff, they contract with vendors to help them accomplish their market research needs. But why do smaller businesses more frequently give short shrift to market research in their own companies? Well, they generally have 3 excuses. We don't have the time, we don't have the people to do this, and we don't have the budget for it. But using the excuses of we don't have time, money, or personnel, it puts you on a dangerous path. I just have a few statistics here. 96% of unhappy customers don't ever complain to the company, and 91% of those are simply going to leave your business and never come back without having told you why. Businesses with an average Yelp score increase of just 1 star, that translates on average to a 9% revenue boost. So it's very good to make sure that your customers are happy and giving you powerful reviews. And it costs 6 to 7 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. And I've seen numbers even up to 10 times more. So these are just important considerations to keep in mind. But as I said, we're gonna kind of focus on that money aspect. The money excuse shouldn't stop you from doing market research, and I'm going to share some inexpensive research techniques with you. First one overall is something called competitive intelligence. One of the often under-investigated things your business or your client needs to know is, how do my competitors conduct business in my marketplace? So finding the answer to that seemingly simple question is called competitive intelligence. There are numerous excellent research consultancies that specialize in competitive intelligence, and that's all they do. But a small business owner might not have the available budget to pay for such advanced information gathering services. So we need to explore some basic market research practices that a small business can employ on its own to gather inexpensive competitive intelligence. So one is a prospective customer role play. Let's just imagine for a moment, what's it like for a typical customer in your market to go shopping for the types of products or services that your business offers? And it costs you nothing but some time to sit down for an afternoon and place yourself in the role of one of your prospects. I'm going to apologize here that this is not tailored really to creatives in the freelance business, but we're going to pick something else. Let's pretend that you've just moved into your local area and you need something delivered to your home. You've got this beautiful home. It has a oil furnace in the basement. So you're going to need heating oil for your furnace. What's the first thing that you're possibly going to do? Well, one thing I can tell you, this is a Google Trends chart. This is one source of ways that people find out about new businesses. It was very popular to do back in the early 2000s, and now almost nobody does it anymore. Any guesses as to what that is? It's the Yellow Pages. And it's really interesting if you look at the states that are still looking in the Yellow Pages. They're usually the the lower income, lower education states, and then the states that don't use Yellow Pages anymore are kind of at the high end of the average income and educational attainment. So not many people are using the Yellow Pages anymore. So. But what they do now is go to the 21st century's version of the Yellow Pages, Google. Google search is where you're going to go if you need a heating oil dealer to bring oil to your home before you get cold in the winter. That's probably the top way you're going to do it. Of course, you might ask your neighbors who do they use and things like that. But generally speaking, knowing how you appear on a Google search and doing a website evaluation is going to be very important. So let's pretend we're in Fargo, North Dakota. I type in heating oil dealers, Fargo, ND. I quickly see an array of companies from whom I might purchase. What I want to do now in the role, if say I'm a heating oil distributor and I'm doing this customer role play, or remember freelancers, maybe your client is a heating oil dealer, so you want to kind of help them out and help them learn a little bit more about what's going on. You would check out their competitors. So in this first one, let's look at that Kotaco Fuels and Propane. We go to their website, I hope. The company points all of its Google users to its About Us page, not its home page. Now, in your opinion, looking at this, is that a good decision? If you're looking for heating oil and you click that link and this is the first thing you see, what is it? It's a lot of text. It's not a whole lot of information that really talks about here's what we do or here's what we sell. I mean, their logo says fuel and propane, and it's a beautiful bison or buffalo there. But it's a lot of text. There's not really a call to action. I would be confused about what this company does if you gave me 3 seconds to look over the content. I would need 30 seconds to really learn, and a lot of times people don't spend 30 seconds. They've already hit the back button and they're on to looking at another company. So even if you do go to the homepage of this company, the homepage, I don't know, does it scream oil and propane to you? I don't know. This looks like a natural history museum or something like that. So anyway, I'm not trying to disparage this company, but they have definitely, gone on a stylistic decision path here that they want to, communicate a feeling, I guess, about their company and not so much a practical presentation of what they do. So let's go back to do another evaluation. Let's look to the company just above them, Dale Petroleum Company. And swear to God, I just picked these at random. I picked the city at random and I picked the companies at random. These were the first two I looked at, and it seemed like it was a great fit for our presentation. So what does Dale Petroleum do? Aha, okay, we've got an oil truck, we've got oil barrels, there's a drop of oil there. I've got an 800 number that I can call. They're promising me timely, reliable delivery. They've been in the business since 1981, so they must know what they're doing. I mean, I've captured all of that in about 6 or 7 seconds, and in my opinion, this is a good decision for a company like this. I hope you guys agree as well. So which of these companies do you think is better at signaling that they are in the heating oil delivery business? I mean, it's important, number one, on a website, that you give a clear description of who you are. Somebody who stumbles on your website shouldn't have to do a lot of investigating to figure out what it is exactly that you do. So we've got Bisons or oil trucks. I'm giving the check mark to Dale Petroleum. The next thing that you want to think about is that you have a useful site menu. There should be clear links to the most important pages, guiding visitors to the information that they are looking for. You've got to have something about the services you provide. There should be easy contact info. If it's a customer login type of site where they are either paying a bill or checking their account or submitting a work order, that needs to be there. And there should also be reasons to believe, what we call trust signals. And I'm borrowing that phrase from a friend of mine, Scott Baradell, wrote a great book called Trust Signals, so that's my little plug for him. But these are the things like customer reviews or testimonials. These are the things like, Google 5-star reviews or Yelp reviews. You want to call those out on your website if they're a credit to your business. Another thing is that you should have easy to find contact information. You don't want to lose a customer to a competitor just because you made it a little bit difficult for them to get in touch with you. So you should always, I think, provide your telephone number, your email address, even a physical address. People like to know, like, where are they located and how far are they going to be from servicing my home or what have you. And there should be a web contact form. In this case, Dale Petroleum checked the box on all 4 of those. Kotaku only has a web form. So it's really, what message are you sending potential customers if your posture is, oh, don't call us. I want you to complete this form, and then at our leisure, we'll call you back. That's the message that I get from that. And so again, I think one website has done a better job at this than the other. And again, if one of these companies is your client, these are the types of messages that you could send back to them if you're helping them with digital marketing. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, and there are folks in the Teamwrkr community who know a lot more about this than I do. So the next thing in this customer role play is the idea of mystery shopping. I should probably ask, does anybody have any questions about sort of the website evaluation process that I just talked about? Okay, great.
I think that's spot on. Like you said, there's lots of people in our community that know a lot about that, but it's great to come at it from the prospective customer standpoint, right? If I was just finding out, maybe I have a client as a freelancer, I'm like, oh, I want to help them, and well, I'll start as if I was their customer. Yeah.
And when you're shopping the competition, you might see an idea that's like really attractive, that, hey, here's what they're doing. It might not even be in their same market. It could be an idea that's sort of imported from another region of the country or another country altogether. But
I think something that was, sorry. I think something that was interesting was seeing the side-by-side comparison. The first one, I think visually was more appealing to me, just because I'm not somebody who's in oil and gas, and I can sort of see, they think they're calling upon nature, they're calling upon natural resources, fossil fuels, and I can see how there might have been some attempt at potentially rebranding to make it seem like, okay, yes, we are oil and gas, but we are, for the planet, for the earth. You see this picture of some canyon, and then the next one is just more direct, like, this is the truck that you're going to see us roll up in, this is in a more realistic way. So it's fascinating to see what these different companies are going for, maybe like what kind of message they're trying to put out, whether or not that was successful.
Yeah, that's true, Kristen. I'm giving my opinion here, and I'm sure there are market segments of customers who absolutely would prefer the more stylistic, aspirational imagery and messaging. You know, if you actually read that messaging, a lot of it had to do with, you know, we build the foundation to help your business succeed, or to make your home safe and comfortable and secure. You know, that you know, messaging, and certainly I'm sure that that does play, and maybe that's the type of customer that they're seeking. So I shouldn't be you know, quite so decisive in terms
So
of
you lay down that
calling a
hammer of
winner or loser.
judgment, Greg. You lay it down. Do it.
I
I
mean,
do
yeah.
not fear. We trust your expertise. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, I'm not a website evaluator, but I can see that, you know, going back to sort of the competitive intelligence there, and it's pretty low cost, right, to go do something like that. Spend even just a few minutes or half an hour of time going Googling and finding out what people are doing out there that are your competitors, or even in adjacent industries that might inform, you know, you about your business, or
Right.
your client about their business. Pretty
Right.
super interesting and low cost. Yeah. So I don't want to take
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I would let you get back to your talk.
All right. So mystery shopping is another thing that you can do. This is kind of like the next step. You know, after you've done that web search, what does a typical consumer do? Well, the prospect makes the call, or they fill out the web form. But you know, what can you learn by actually calling your competitors or your clients' competitors to see how they handle new business leads, and you know, learn from it. First thing I would ask, you know, what's the mood? What impression do you take away from the call? Is the competition sales department something like this, very professional, buttoned up, ready to go, or are they something a little more like this? You know, if that's the mood or the impression you're taking away from the call, you instantly know, just as a human being, that you know, one type of company is doing things right, and the other has dropped the ball. But mystery shopping doesn't have to, um, you know, be just one size fits all. You know, the recommendations that I make is you should probably pick one day a month to spend a little bit of time mystery shopping. You don't need to wear a disguise, but you also don't want to let on that, hey, I'm a competitor and I'm checking you out. You know, so you know, you have to kind of balance that line between you know, kind of subterfuge and genuine interaction. But I think, you know, any business, you know, while they would be disappointed to be on the receiving end of a mystery shop, if they're doing well, you know, it's only going to elevate the industry and make things better for consumers anyway. And I can't see, you know, that a business would really have a problem with that. But you don't even have to contact the business. You know, if you're a soccer mom and, you know, you're talking to other parents at your kids' sporting events, you know, you could ask them, hey, you know, do you have an oil furnace? You know, or do you use gas? Or, you know, what, and if it's oil, you know, who are you using and what do you like about them, or what do you dislike? You know, go ahead and talk. You know, it could be chatting with folks at the church picnic. Another thing that a lot of businesses and freelancers probably don't consider is that your local high school or your nearest college or community college, they might have, you know, a business program where they can hook you up with students who are willing to do you know, market research projects for you at either a very low cost or low hourly pay, because they're going to get some credit hours for, you know, a sort of a you know, a business internship or a business related experience. So if you can find, you know, that type of program, that can work, or just kids in your neighborhood, or, you know, folks in your neighborhood, adults, you'll be surprised at the, you know, the type of work that they might do for you if you just offer, you know, hey, if you could do this for me, you know, call these two companies and you tell me, you know, which one does a better job of selling you their product. You know, I'll give you a $25 you know, restaurant card or something like that. People would love you for that, because you know, sometimes they like to, you know, go on a little mission or whatever that helps you out for your business. So even if you're being a little bit secretive, I'm just gonna, you know, still say be a good human being, and also put your own business to the same test. You know, it obviously it's not going to be you calling because you'll be recognized or what have you, but you know, you could ask somebody else to if you have, you know, other staff or what have you, um, to check things out. And you know, you don't want to disrupt the flow of a competitor's business. You know, don't go overboard with this. And shoppers don't need to close the deal and actually buy heating oil or, you know, things like that, unless you want to underwrite that process as well. You know, but your secret shopper can honestly say they're not looking to buy today, but we're just shopping to get familiar with what options you have. And, you know, as I said, submit your own business to the same tests. All right, another thing to really focus on are customer reviews. It's very important to read the reviews, whether they're your own company or those of your competitors. So there's the Better Business Bureau. These are some, you know, sources that maybe you don't think about. Consumer Affairs, Yellow Pages. We talked about, you know, Yellow Pages is digital online, but of course, Google reviews and Yelp. You know, those are some of the top ones. If you're in the software industry, there are like software review sites and things like that. But what if there are limitations in terms of time, money, personnel that you are kind of forced or backed into? I can really only ask my customers one question. I just want to expose you to an idea here. Many of you have probably already heard of this, but it's kind of called the ultimate question. And it is, how likely are you to recommend this brand to a friend or a colleague? It can be a friend or a neighbor or something like that. So this is what's known as the Net Promoter Score, or it's kind of rebranded now as Net Promoter System. But the Net Promoter Score is basically, it's an 11-point scale that are the answer choices to this question. So your likelihood to recommend is either a 0 all the way up to a 10. And to calculate the Net Promoter Score, you're basically taking those who are considered promoters, those who give you a 9 or a 10. In this example, it's 50% of the population. Those are your promoters. And then you're subtracting from that percentage those who are detractors. Those would be the 0s through 6. So in this case, that's 30%. So 50% minus 30% gives you a Net Promoter Score of 20. And that would be pretty good in most industries. This whole platform or proposal was put together by Fred Reichheld of Bain & Company. It's a really simple scoring system that's now used all across the research industry and all across business. There are whole programs built around improving your Net Promoter Score. So that's something, if you're ever, you know, kind of backed into a corner and can just ask one question, that's one there. So just how does it work? Net Promoter Score, a lot of different businesses, you know, have Net Promoter Scores. This is some outdated information here. So you're going to see some brands that, you know, maybe aren't even in business anymore. But I always kind of like to play a game like, can you guess the international airline that had the top Net Promoter Score that starts with the letter J? Any idea? Or how about the domestic airline that starts with an S?
Southwest.
There you go. So
I was gonna say Spirit, but that's because I'm
Spirit has to, yeah, I know I'd give a high Net Promoter Score.
but
Yeah.
I don't imagine they do so well in that category.
Right.
yeah, I don't know that in 2014 Spirit was even an up and running operation. But anyway, I'm just, you know, showing these to you. It's interesting to me how you know, you can have top performers in an industry with an 84 Net Promoter Score, and that was USAA for home insurance. Or you can have a score as low as 20 and be the top performer in a category, and that was for internet service. Bright House was acquired by Charter, or maybe Time Warner, and then Charter acquired Time Warner, so they don't even exist anymore. It kind of goes to show you that, you know, you can have a great Net Promoter Score, but you may not exist as a company. You know, it may be the result of a buyout, which is probably good for shareholders. But anyway, to further emphasize that point, Net Promoter Score isn't always tied to great business health. This was a study of IT professionals about the brands that they work with. And you see the Net Promoter Score is going from left to right. Your most successful company in terms of likelihood to recommend is Intel and Apple. But you know, you can have good stock performance at almost any point along the spectrum here. So there's a little bit of an irony in that, and that is one of, you know, kind of the drawbacks with NPS, that it's not always reflective or indicative of customer loyalty and profitability. So is there anything else that you should be willing to pay to measure? Measuring churn is something that you should think about as your own business. it's a good idea. Like if I had 10 clients this past year, how many of them are continuing to do work with me this year? It's a very key question to be thinking about. I'm going to harken back to a 2014 meeting of the Atlantic Region Energy Expo that I presented about churn in the home heating oil business. One key question that came up at that meeting is, what are the main reasons you lose oil heat customers? And the answers that they gave at that conference were price. There's competition from spot price dealers who are just looking to sell oil at like 2 cents above their wholesale cost, and poor customer service. That can drive somebody to switch their heating oil provider. But I came away from the meeting and I thought, I'm going to do some research on this. And I went to the Census Bureau. There's some very interesting data out there about heating oil households. I picked New Jersey since the conference was in New Jersey. I started to think, are heating oil dealers evading the elephant in the room by focusing just on pricing and customer service? I mean, the number of households in New Jersey that even use oil heat has been in decline since 1980. And the situation is even worse if you think about it, that more and more homes are being built in New Jersey every year. So the percentage of heating oil homes is dwindling even faster. So this is the number of total households. And then let me superimpose the heating oil households against that. You see, the situation is even worse than what just the green alone, presents. Heating oil is disappearing, as an energy source for newer homes. And again, turning to the census data, I was able to put together this little chart. Again, this is just free information out there, but it helps to inform an industry that natural gas is what is, really increasing over time in New Jersey. Bottled gas, that's propane, that's the yellow, so very small, but increasing. Electricity, also fairly small, but increasing. Another big component was coal. Nobody uses coal anymore to heat their home, but certainly in 1940, it was the majority of homes. And then the rest is heating oil. So this is just another way of visualizing, what's happening to our market. So if you're just focusing on price and customer service, you're missing that, the real competition, the real threat is just alternative sources of energy. So maybe a heating oil company would want to try to diversify to be able to, at least supply bottled gas or something of that nature. All right, so measuring satisfaction. This is another thing that, you may be willing to spend money on, and you can spend millions of dollars keeping track of customer satisfaction ratings. You are very familiar, I'm sure, with the J.D. Power rankings, consumer reports, and how they rank different companies. There's also the American Customer Satisfaction Index that is very popularly cited. But you don't need to do these things because, as I said, they're going to cost you millions of dollars to be involved with or to pursue in some way. I do have an alternative, though, for doing customer satisfaction research at a cheaper cost. Amazon has something called Mechanical Turk. And what is it? It's named for a chess playing machine that was actually developed back in the 18th century, if you can believe it. It was really just a very tiny person inside the box moving the chess pieces above, but the inventor of this machine made people think it was a self-knowing computer of some sort. But Mechanical Turk was started by Amazon. It's a distributed labor network, and you've probably heard about some of these things. Like a company might show you photos of their furniture, and they want you to, they'll show you 2 photos of the same piece of furniture, but which photo is at the better angle or is better lit? And you just go through and select, you're making the choices, and along with other people, you're helping to tell that company which photo they should use on their website. And maybe you're getting paid, 3 cents per photo that you evaluate, or 2 cents or something like that. So it's extremely, low cost distributed labor, very inexpensive. What I'm going to show you is a test that I did of this platform back in 2015. And again, for the heating oil industry, I focused just on New Jersey residents, and I was able to capture 74 respondents over the course of about 6 weeks. What were the results? I found out from respondents, what do they use to heat their home? And as you can see, it kind of matches up with the census data that we had seen, but kind of ran out in the year 2000. There were some respondents who didn't know, which is always good to know that you're going to encounter homeowners who are, maybe their spouse knows a little bit more about what's heating their home. I was able to do a geographic map that might help to show a little bit about not only where the population is, but to see if there are any, more intense areas for oil. It would seem that, if you're outside of that I-95 corridor, you're more likely to be a heating oil customer. And then I asked them, how satisfied are you with your provider? And this is what was interesting to me. I was able to do the survey and come away with a statistic that would be very valuable, I would think, to the heating oil industry, that their customers are the most satisfied with their heating solution. And we even took a look, are there any differences between men and women? And interestingly enough, no, they were pretty close to each other. So, you may be asking, like, okay, well, how much did that cost? What were the drawbacks? Well, there are drawbacks for sure. Mechanical Turk, you can't target a specific city or a specific county. You can't go below like state level. It's a very basic questionnaire tool built in. So Ophelia muted herself. So it's a very basic questionnaire tool. It's probably not even as robust as what you would see with SurveyMonkey or something like that. You can't do follow-up contacts. So if somebody gave you a really interesting answer, you're not going to be able to follow up. And it tends to produce fairly small sample sizes. I mean, in my case, we found eight named customers of different oil companies. So that's this is all we really kind of encountered, just a one-off on each of these. So you wouldn't want to publish a newspaper article or something about the results of these surveys, but they could still at least help to inform you and give you enough information that maybe you do have a sales pitch. I think the biggest benefit of this, my sample for this to get 74 completes was $8.14. So yeah, yes, folks, it can be done. You can do what at least appears to be a comprehensive survey that gives you valuable information for a very low cost. So
that's incredible, Greg.
I love your reactions.
Yeah, it's remarkable, actually.
Yeah.
And I think I'm usually up to date on some of this stuff, and I've never heard of the Mechanical Turk from Amazon. So thank you. That's
yeah. A lot of people haven't heard of it, so it's definitely it's a little bit clunky. It's hard to get used to how you set these up, but once you do, it's a good way to try to pursue doing some research on the cheap. There are other inexpensive options that you can think about. If you're a company that sends out monthly billings, you could put a postcard in there, say, hey, please complete this survey. It could be tied to a voicemail phone number or a website survey. You could do outbound telephone calls. That does get to be a little more expensive, but if it's just a short, quick question like following up on a service call to get their rating of the technician, that can be pretty quick and cheap. And then web surveys, Google Forms, SurveyMonkey. The platform I happen to use is called Alchemer. Their full service license for a year is, I think it's about $1,900. So, that may be outside of the reach of some of the freelancers we're talking to, but certainly if you have a client that's a small business that maybe has 20, 30, 40, 50 employees, they should be able to afford a $1,900 robust survey software package. So I'm just going to give you some final marching orders here for your freelance business or that of your clients. You should be encouraging yourself and them to conduct some competitive intelligence. And what do I mean by that? Remember, it's the website evaluations, it's mystery shopping, it's customer reviews, taking a look at those and finding out what your competitors are doing really well or what you're doing not so well. The Net Promoter Score is something that you can think about. Remember, it's just one question, so it can't be too expensive to deploy. Taking a look at churn and understanding, where are your customers going? Are they going to competitors? Are they going to entirely different platforms? Or are they just abandoning the sector altogether? and satisfaction. That's a great chart there that I'm showing, that heating oil has the highest customer satisfaction, and it literally costs less than $9 to obtain that information. All right, so I will just thank you here and leave it open for any questions that you might have.
Wow, that's awesome, Greg. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I got a couple of quick questions actually. The first one is, how has research maybe changed over the last few years? I mean, we've had the pandemic, we've had all kinds of stuff. I mean, even the mechanical Turk. It's so funny they actually do call it that, right? It's like they reference, like, let's call it mechanical Turk. But how has the business changed over the last few years? I can remember doing research for literally hundreds of thousands of dollars and been like almost, I wouldn't say dissatisfied, but I guess a little let down with the actual return right on it. But there's been a bunch of changes. How have you seen that change? And maybe even look a little forward too, if you could. What do you think is going to happen over the next year or so with it?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the biggest things changing in market research over the past few years is that there's a huge proliferation of platforms that are do-it-yourself research opportunities. If we went back 10 years ago, there were maybe, I don't know, I'd say 5, 6, 7, legitimate competing platforms for DIY web surveys. Now there's probably at least 30. And they have pros and cons with each of them. Some of them are truly low cost or no cost. You can do some pretty nifty surveys with SurveyMonkey without ever having to pay a dime to them. The thing is that there will be limitations on how many respondents you can collect or how long they'll save your data. So if you wanted to follow up with another survey 6 months from now, essentially you're going to have to potentially reprogram that or what have you. But one thing I would really want to talk about is sample. Sample is just basically a pool of people who may or may not be willing to complete a survey or participate in market research of some kind. And what I am finding, and this has been a problem really for years, but it just seems even more pronounced now, is that there are sampling companies that are just interested in selling you the project, getting you your 500 completes, and they almost don't have a care in the world about the quality of the respondent. And a lot of times you can tell that these respondents are kind of working in teams, even providing the same answers from different IP addresses. Like they're following a script that, for any open end, just give this message about, I really like the product. It's a great product. It brings value and peace of mind to me. So it sounds like a good answer, but when you see it pop up 4 times out of 500 answers, word for word, verbatim, something fishy is going on. And I would say these professional survey takers are probably now even transitioning to AI. Somebody is probably just letting a program run and become a member of as many panels as possible and just respond to every survey and intelligently evaluate the screening questions in such a way that they somehow get through. So what I like to do, just a little hint, anytime you're doing a survey, you really got to put in some red herring type of questions or trap questions that really require the respondent to stop and think for a moment. Even if it's something like, here's a 10-point scale that's often used in surveys to, assess quality control on this study. We would like you to select answer, the number 4 on the 10-point scale. Something like that. I find that about 20% of respondents fail that question. And if they're failing that type of question, then you can, or if they're passing that type of question, you can get even a little more difficult. If it's a study about real estate in the United States or something like that, or where people would like to live, there's no harm in asking a question like, here are 5 cities in the United States. Please select the one that is the farthest north. And you put in something like Minneapolis, and then all the other ones are southern cities like, Dallas and Miami and Phoenix. If somebody doesn't know that, yeah, you may be screening out somebody who's just ignorant about geography, but more often than not, you're more likely to be screening out an AI or a bot or somebody who's, you know, um, just getting paid 25 cents or whatever to complete these surveys. So
Yeah.
that's a big thing that, is going forward, something has to be done to kind of stay ahead of the AI generated survey respondents. If there isn't a way to kind of get a handle on that, I think more and more clients of companies like mine are going to start to doubt and lack trust in the quantitative surveys. And I think I'm even seeing that with my business, that more and more clients are asking, I'd rather you do 10 or 15 one-on-one interviews on Zoom with customers or prospective customers and really find out what makes them tick, rather than just collecting 250 responses to try to find out, how much they should charge for a new product they're thinking of rolling out.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Greg. Thanks. I think I'm reminded of the the CAPTCHA, oh, you try to sign in, there's pick all the things that have a bicycle on the, all the tiles that show a bicycle.
Right.
Or like punch in these letters. I can't even see what the letters are. I'm like, what was that,
Right.
X or a Y tilted, or I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so it's very confusing, but that's really a great point. I have one more, but I don't want to monopolize. Kristen, you have a question, or?
I also have a question, but Phil, you can go first if you want.
I was just going to ask. I think as a freelancer and someone's trying to help businesses, whether we're designing websites or writing copy or whatever it may be, the NPS is super interesting to me. And my question comes around to because it seems like a lot of people use it, yes, but I think it's why it's terribly effective, right? It's one question, and you don't have to burden anyone a lot to kind of answer that, right? You can almost ask all your customers that on a regular basis. But is there a cutoff as to how many respondents you have to have for that? Like obviously sample, a bigger sample, we all took any statistics, or would be like, oh, well, probably that's 1,300 to get a score of and then 95th percentile or whatever. But I'm just really thinking about a smaller business, or where I'm helping a small business to design their website or whatever it may be, but their NPS, I'd like to gather some information on NPS. Is it good enough to get a few of them, be like, hey, this is indicative of something?
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Phil. I'm not a statistician by education or practice, but I do understand that there are some rules of thumb, that there is kind of a magic number that exists. You ask some people it's 25, you ask other people it's 30, you ask other people it's 35, but something sort of happens at that point where the possibility of differences that you're seeing in longitudinal samples, taken the beginning of the year versus the middle of the year versus the end of the year. If you have a sample of about 30 or so, differences in the outcomes are more likely to be due to actual characteristics or the environment that the people are actually in, as opposed to just random sampling error. Like, oh, this time we happen to get 18 grumpy people, and the previous time we got 12 happy people. So there is kind of that magic number of about 30 is what I would say. Obviously, you get more confidence if you can get up to 100. If you get to 385 or something, your maximum margin of error is plus or minus 5% at the 95% confidence level. So that's one that a lot of businesses kind of shoot for.
Yeah.
They always want a sample of at least 400 so that they can, strut into their management meeting and say, well, this has a margin of error of no more than 5%, plus or minus 5%.
But I could conceive of a time if I was, again, maybe some of our community, they're working with someone on designing a website, for someone, it could even be how, you could get just a few respondents, like you said, 20 maybe would be helpful.
Yeah. And I'm not saying you can certainly learn from getting 5, net promoter score responses. If 4 out of 5 come back as a 2, your business is doing something wrong. I don't need the additional 25 interviews
right. Yeah. On the edges, right. On the edges.
Right.
If it's coming back really high, then maybe this is great. If things come back really low, oh, wait a minute, we should hold on, stop surveying, fixing the business problem. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and especially if you ask that one follow-up question of, why did you give that score? You're gonna learn right there, what it is that seems to be, generating so much animosity or so much love. If everybody's giving you a 10 and you say, what do you like the most? Carol treats me like part of the family. You know, that, you know, maybe you need to give Carol a lunch out or whatever.
Yeah, give Carol a raise. Yeah, right. Promote Carol. Right. Yeah, we love Carol. Yeah. All right, Kristen. Sorry, go right ahead with your
No,
question.
that's okay. Well, Greg, I was wondering, what are some cheap tools that you'd recommend for people who are looking to get like their app tested or looking to get their website looked at, and really just nothing, not even necessarily like strong feedback, but maybe something that's like, I want to see how people navigate within this new website that I've created or within this new app that I've got.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can use Mechanical Turk for that if you're willing to just kind of go with general population folks, you know, testing a website. And you can even kind of select individuals who have already shown that they have experience doing a similar type of job. So, you know, that can help you there. You're going to pay more than that $8.14 or whatever for that type of work. But, you know, it would still be relatively cheap. You know, the next platforms that I know of that really take you up the scale, and you're probably going to be needing to spend thousands of dollars to obtain a subscription for those, are usertesting.com. And there's another one called D-Scout, as in Diary Scout. And that's more for like diary type of studies where you're asking somebody to go about their business day or their you know, residential household day, and you know, take a little video of yourself whenever you do something. Every time you open the refrigerator, you know, take a little video and, you know, show us what you're picking or things like that. So those are some other platforms. I apologize, like, you know, user experience testing or website testing is an area that we did build out at Comcast Business, and I was, you know, sort of in charge of a small team of 2 consultants who were, you know, kind of managing that toward the end of my time with that company. But, you know, for what is a really low cost solution, the, you know, Amazon Mechanical Turk is one that I can recommend, but I'm sure there are some others out there where you can get some pretty low cost, you know, kind of website beta testers
That's great.
or
Oh,
app testers.
oh, sorry. That is wonderful. I've never heard of Mechanical Turk before, and I think it's going to be really helpful. The follow-up question is, you know, you've got, when you have competitors, you know that like the research is out there. Is there a way that you can purchase research that's already been conducted that you know would share similar demographics that you're looking at?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. There are definitely areas where there are a lot of what I call canned or syndicated research or secondary research, where, you know, somebody has already done a study and they're now selling the report. What I do find is that you have to be really careful with those. A lot of times the reports are going to be north of $2,000. So you're going to be paying, you know, $2, $3, $4,000 for these reports. And I have found that there are a number of unscrupulous research entities out there. They're very often, you know, headquartered in the UAE or in Singapore, you know, and if you really look at what they are selling, I think a savvy consumer can beware and can understand, okay, does this company really know about the next 10-year future projection of cashew production and mammograms? You know, it's um, so, you know, a lot of those are kind of like, you know, global market sizing reports, and just I would caution anybody to really be careful with those. And you basically end up, you really need to go with some trusted name brands, which are super expensive, but like Gartner and IDC and those types of companies for that type of report. But yeah, for sure, there are like financial services research companies that specialize just in you know, banking or credit cards, and they'll do 2, 3, 4 surveys a year, and they'll sell each of those surveys to subscribers, either one off, or you can, you know, book an annual subscription where you're getting access to all of their content, you know, at a probably, you know, a 30% reduced price or something like that.
All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Well, Greg, this has been it's enlightening and super powerful in terms of the tools that are out there. You know, that we all can kind of step back, whether you're looking to evaluate your own business as a freelancer and saying, well, geez, how am I doing here? And I think that's one of the big takeaways here. I was coming in this, by the way, thinking, oh, this is how we can help our customers, but what I've realized for this is that there's probably lots of good ways that you could just improve your own business as a freelancer by asking, NPS of customers. You don't need every one of them to get back to you. You know what I mean? Again, if you're scoring highly, you're scoring poorly in certain in that question,
Right.
you'll figure out why. And just keeping, and it's also, I think, a great way to stay in touch with your customers, right? Maybe you haven't touched base with someone in the past, but you can get a quick survey out to them. Maybe you haven't talked to that customer they used you 6 months ago, and you'd love to re-engage them. One way to do that is ask them how they think you did, right? So,
Right.
sort of interesting way to kind of continuously market yourself to people. Ask for kind of quick evaluations and reviews on things, and that might be helpful. But then beyond that, of course, we're working with our own customers and trying to help them, and often under lots of pressure from a cost standpoint. But just being able to go out and use something like Mechanical Turk, or just do some really quick evaluation of a competitor website or reviews online, things like that, would really help your customer at a low cost to them. So that's awesome. I don't know if anybody else has other questions. I'm considering people's time, but again, I want to thank Greg for doing this, and it's like I said, it's very powerful stuff.